In the Perspectrum podcast, we discuss controversial topics. Outside of this context, Michael and I are both working professionals. While doing this show, we are not acting as agents or representatives of our respective institutions, and none of the views that we express reflect the outlooks of our employers. So don't come to my office and throw toilet paper at me.
And I don't have an office, but don't come to my cube.
Welcome to the Perspectrum. I'm Nathan Seelove.
And I'm Michael Bloom.
And we have a super exciting and super nerdy episode for you all tonight. We are going to be talking about the reconciliation tax bill that the Republicans have just passed the House of Representatives and is on its way to the Senate and can only be described as comically evil to an extent to where if this were a fictional story, it would push credibility.
So let's get fiscal, Nathan.
Let's get fiscal, dude. I did do a lot of reading, but this is a very you episode.
Well, I don't know. Let's get into the bill. I feel like that's where we have a lot in common.
Yeah.
So as Nathan mentioned, the House of Representatives, which is controlled by Republicans, they passed a budget reconciliation bill on Thursday morning, which is the day of the record for us here. It is basically, in the world of closely divided Congress that we live in, this is Trump's legislative agenda. Because when you pass a budget, that's the bite at the apple that you get. And in the House, it passed super narrowly. The vote was 215 to 214. So after over 12 hours of in the session, with just two Republicans opposing the legislation, Thomas Massie from Kentucky and Warren Davidson from Ohio. They're not your moderate Republicans there in the House.
No, they specifically didn't advance the legislation on the grounds that it would add to the deficit.
Yeah.
Which it
is
will
the
add to
least
deficit.
offensive part of the bill, honestly.
But you know what? If it gets Republicans to vote against it, kudos.
Totally.
But I do want us to start out real quick with just a few things in the bill for the sake of fairness that are not terrible.
I agree. We should definitely talk about those things.
Yeah. I don't actually remember if you and I have had a conversation about the whole no tax on tips thing before, or at least if we had
I think
that
for
on
just
the
a few
pod.
minutes as part of the an episode last year leading up to the election.
Yeah. So the no tax on tips is one of the things that's in here. And you know what? Given everything else that is in this bill, I'm just going to call it good by default.
Sure.
Yeah,
because, if you earn less than $160,000 in 2025, you don't get tax on your tips. Great.
Yeah. I think it's kind of ridiculous that is the focus of the of the tax, because that basically would mean that say you work at McDonald's where you don't get tips.
Yeah.
Right. But it's virtually the same job, or not virtually the same job, but it's a very similar sector.
Yeah.
Of work. Now I understand that waiting tables is very different, but at the end of the day, you are doing a very similar sector job. Why should you not get a tax cut, but other people get a tax cut? But you know what? I'm not someone that goes out there and says oh, well, if one person is suffering, then we all should be suffering.
Totally.
So I'm just going to go ahead and say, you know what? Fine. Right. We're good. We're going to call this good. Kudos. That's fine. No tax on tips. Another thing that I would say is definitely a good thing is no tax on overtime.
Yeah.
I totally dig that.
Yeah,
totally
me too.
dig that. Honestly, I like the additional created benefits of overtime pay. And just making them not taxable. I think that's just icing on the cake for that. So
totally. And it
agree.
It further entrenches the line that a full-time work week is 40 hours and above that is excessive and extra.
Yeah. And you should, and if you do that, if you do work to an excessive amount, you should be compensated significantly for that, because you shouldn't have to do that to begin with.
Yeah.
So we're going to call that good. Honestly, not even we're going to call that good. I think that's just unequivocally good.
Yeah.
They also have tax breaks for auto loan interest payments, which I also think that's good. I like that. It calls for an increase in the child tax credit to $2,500.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And it makes the $2,000 child tax credit permanent rather than expiring with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2025.
Yeah. Not permanent, because here's the yes but moment. So all of those things that I listed just now, those are all good. They also expire in 2028.
Yeah, the $2,500, the extra $500 over the 2,000.
Yeah.
But the 1,000
but-
to 2,000, that part's permanent. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one kind of concern. All right.
Yeah,
a lot of
totally.
the good things, the things that are just unequivocally good in this bill, they expire in 2028.
Yeah, which is like clearly meant to be a short-term political benefit.
Yeah.
Without the long-term cost of having these things like hitting the budget. So basically this is a way for them to bow to the political realities of the situation while kowtowing to the fiscal hawks that just want to cut.
Yeah.
I actually have two other things that are
Go for it.
that in my opinion are unequivocally good things that I like that are in here. So one is for children under 8 years old, it establishes a special savings program for these kids and seeds all of these accounts with $1,000 from the federal government. So basically what this is it's funded by the Treasury Department, and essentially it allows parents to contribute up to $5,000 a year on a balance, on a savings program that can be invested in, like a diversified low risk fund, basically allowing from the time of your kid's birth, seeded by $1,000 from the federal government, that earnings to grow and compound over time, which like could be, and basically at the age of 18, they would be able to withdraw 50% of that balance, that value, for education or a first-time home purchase, and then another 50% at age 30, which could just be huge. Like the most important factor in setting up yourself and your kids for financial success is time, not money. And so having like $1,000 plus $5,000 up to $5,000 a year in savings could literally lead us to have people that have like, hundreds of thousands of dollars from, a modest savings plan. So I think that is like a really good incentive to get people to contribute to like funds that can actually help set up our kids to like have a seed to grow on once they're adults.
I do just want to make a comment about that. And this might be me being petty, or maybe just calling out petty. I don't know. They call them Trump accounts.
No, that is stupid. Yeah.
Come on. They call them fucking Trump accounts.
It is a little bit less on the nose than the MAGA accounts or money accounts for growth and advancement. But yeah.
Like, they call them fucking Trump accounts. And look, I need to I'm still a little bit confused about how the specific program worked. I mean, you had mentioned that it was any child under 7 in one place. I read that it starts with kids that were born like since January of 2024. So I'm a little bit confused about whether or not I would be eligible, but there is a small part of me that just wants to be like, I don't want to get a fucking Trump account because it's called a Trump account. Now, I know that that's stupid.
Yeah.
And if after looking at this, it's clear that it isn't some like data information grab or whatnot,
Sure.
I probably will just suck it up and do it. But the only reason why they did that is because they know that there will be some Democrats that are just so disgusted by Trump that they're like, I don't want anything with his fucking name on it. Like, that's the only reason why they did
it's definitely a honeypot trying to trick Democrats into having something called a Trump account.
Yeah. It's
okay.
It's petty shit. It's petty shit. But like overall, if it does work the way that they say it works, you're right. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is a good thing is a expansion of another special savings account called a health savings account. So one thing to call out about both of basically everything we've described so far is these help people that can afford to be helped. And I think that's a theme of this whole bill is like, if you can afford it, you get some benefits. Now we'll talk about who it benefits most and who it hurts. But like if you are at the lowest end of the income spectrum, I don't know, if you don't pay taxes, for example, tax credits don't fucking help you. If you don't have money to save, savings plans don't help you. But the other thing that this health savings plan expansion is also something that I think is like is great. So basically, a health savings plan or a health savings account is, or HSA, as you probably have heard of it, is the most tax advantaged savings account that exists. Yeah. It is pre-tax when you put it in. It is all of its gains, which can be invested in, any kind of, or many kinds of like assets. All of its gains are tax-free, and it's withdrawn tax-free. So there are literally no taxes paid on it. And basically it expands like the households that can access it. It doubles the annual contribution for low and middle income earners to $8,600 for individuals and $17,000 for couples. And it also expands how you can use it to pay for expenses related to more preventative longevity care, like being able to use it for a gym membership or fitness classes or things like that. So I think like that is also a good thing. But again, notice all of the good things only help the people that can afford to be helped.
Yeah. Well, and also a lot of the good things are limited.
Yes.
Or expire. So, I mentioned the basically the sunset provision for the extra $500 for the child tax credit.
Yeah.
That is also the case for the tax cuts proposed on car loans and on tips, the no tax on tips. Those also expire in 2028.
Yeah.
And it's also important to note that even that $500 per child increase in the tax credit doesn't actually apply to all families. In fact, so under the current law, there are parents that may work in in jobs that are that are essential, but they aren't paid enough to apply for the full tax credit. And it has been estimated by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities that the lowest earners, accounting for 17 million children that currently don't get the full child tax credit, the full $2,000 child tax credit, would get nothing from this increase of 500. So like it, like Michael said, it helps those that can afford to be helped, but the people that need it the most, like that need it the absolute most, the people at the very bottom, it's not helping them.
Yeah.
And on top of that, holy shit, there is some bad shit in this bill.
Yeah,
holy
for sure.
shit, there is some comically evil shit in this bill. Where to start?
I think we start a little bit like at the top with some of the impacts, because I think like as we talk through each one of these individual things, we should keep in mind what we're giving up and getting as part of this. So the estimate is that it adds $3 trillion to our deficit. So if you're going to add that much to the deficit, you better get some shit in return. So keep that in mind as we talk through where these investments are going. But also the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan office, just a little hobby horse of mine. I think it's so funny. Republicans definitely think of this Congressional Budget Office as this like partisan thing because it's always going against like all of its findings are like against what they want to do.
It's always saying like, hey, in 2017 when they passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the CBO was like, hey, this is going to explode the deficit.
Yeah.
And all Republicans were like, this is a liberal organization.
Yeah.
And then they passed it and it exploded the deficit.
Yeah. I love emphasizing that it's nonpartisan because it's guys, it's just the shit you want to do. It's just bad, and that's why it sucks when it's analyzed. But the CBO found that the bill would increase resources available to the top 10% of American earners and would lower incomes for the bottom 10% of American earners, which is equivalent which is a similar finding as one that was found by the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. They put together a budget model that found that for the lowest quintile of earners with approximately an annual income of $17,000 or less, $17,000 or less, they would see an after-tax income cut of $1,000. And those in the top 0.1% of earners would take home an additional $389,000 in income.
Yeah. The
So, $3 trillion costs the lowest's money, pays it to the 0.1%.
Yeah. The top 1% of people, and this is also according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, the top 1% of people would receive tax cuts that are 3 times the size for those in incomes in the bottom 60%. 3 times. And on top of that, the top 0.6% of people, which accounts for about 1.2 million people in the United States, and that specifically accounts for people that have an annual income that is over $1 million, would receive more total, not in terms of percentage, not per person, total cuts than the 127 million people with incomes below $100,000 a year. Total.
Yeah.
Total. Gee, so just to be clear, this is it is clear as day who the benefits of this bill are specifically targeting. Yeah. All right. They're targeting the wealthy. And look, we have talked about on this pod that we already in the United States have an absolute gross, disgusting level of income inequality. All right. It is remarkably sinister. It is remarkably malicious, the levels of income inequality that we have. The top 0.1% own approximately the same amount of wealth as the bottom 90%. That is not sustainable. All right? That is not a sustainable way. That is not sustainable. Our wealth disparity is worse than the fucking Gilded Age. All right? And this bill wants to make that even worse. All right? The rich don't already have enough. It's like the rich don't already, Jesus fucking Christ, these people already own fucking everything, and still it's not enough.
Yeah. So it starts by extending and making permanent a number of provisions in the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which again, remember, disproportionately benefited high earners. And it is set to expire in 2025.
Now, to be fair, just real quick, we do have to acknowledge the fact that the cuts in income tax for low earners were in that original bill, and they are extended by this. So that does mean that you're not going to be getting a tax increase due to the sunset provision of the income tax. Of income taxes that had been passed in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and I think we can make the argument that can also that is also a good thing. That is also a good thing. This prevents lower income people from getting a tax hike, as a result of that income tax expiring. Now that's probably going to be offset by the massive amount that you're going to have to pay because of the tariffs.
Yeah. And the other provisions in this bill,
Yeah, but
yeah, totally. I think that's a great call. But the other thing is that's grading on a curve, because you don't just have to renew that the whole all the provisions in the bill. You could just renew the ones that were beneficial to low income people. And
it's not just that. The ones that they're renewing are also the ones that are not beneficial to that are just benefiting the rich.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's time for a more lighthearted segment. Tips for Good. So Nathan, why do we do Tips for Good every week?
Well, Michael, I'm so glad you asked, because we do Tips for Good every week because I don't think you're ready for this jelly. I don't think you're ready for this jelly. I don't think you're ready for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Nathan has had a stroke. And that's a shame. It's a shame this will be our last episode.
What are you talking about? here I was sitting around just waiting for my toast to finish cooking, so I could put jelly on it. And I don't think you're ready for that jelly that I'm going to put on the toast that I smell right now.
Are you talking to the toast in this context? Is it like my toast isn't toasted enough, so it's not ready for the jelly? Maybe we shouldn't go down this path.
No, exactly. Like I'm telling the toast,
Yep.
because we don't actually have a toaster. Like when we make toast, we actually
use the
we
broiler.
we cook it in the pan. Like we just cook
in the
it in
pan.
a pan.
Everything's
Yeah.
Texas toast with you people.
Yeah. We just cook it
You
in the
and Ted
pan.
Cruz.
And I'm watching it. As I'm watching it, I'm just like, bro, I don't think you're ready for this jelly. I don't think. And I keep saying it over and over again, and then it's done, and I'm
Sure.
like, okay, now you are. So
And now you are ready. Okay, well, great. And you know what? Toast is great. We love toast.
toast is good. We
Makes
love toast.
our tummies happy and the world better. So
It
maybe
does
we'll
make
just
the world better.
Skip to that, maybe.
Let's just do that.
Good idea. Great idea.
That might be the longest fucking tips for good tirade that we've ever done.
I think you're right. But
So,
people
Michael-
love it.
People love it.
People love it.
I don't even know.
Give the people what they want. you know?
Honestly, I think that's more for our benefit.
I agree.
I still think about, a person who it's their first time ever listening, and they get to this segment where they're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck are these people on about?
Huge drop off in listenership once people get to this segment.
Anyway, Michael, what is our tip for good this week?
Okay, well, on the show, we value combating misinformation, but we don't just value correcting the information. We value how to convince people to change their minds on things. And so I think that's something we talk about a lot. We talk about, we have the Here's Why That's Bullshit segment where we debunk bullshit talking points. But ultimately, it's about, a lot of what we talk about is persuasion related. How do you have the information or use the techniques that actually are able to get people's attention and change their minds? And so we want to talk about one of those techniques today. So this is a method for correcting misinformation that someone has that has led to them to have basically an incorrect opinion about a particular subject. And basically it relies on the idea that if you just tell someone they're wrong, they're going to shut off to your input, right? They're going to close up, not listen to you. No one likes to be told they're wrong. And so rather than correcting directly misinformation, this method called the bypass method works a little bit differently. And some studies have actually found that it is as effective or more effective at actually changing people's perspectives on factually incorrect information than directly addressing their perspective. So basically, this is how it works. Say someone has an incorrect factual perspective on something. For example, say that they say something along the lines of, quote, genetically modified foods have health risks, right? A bypass approach might be to focus on the fact that genetically modified foods may help the bee population to pollinate and survive. And so basically the idea is, in order to change someone's perspective on a specific topic, it's not actually always necessary to change their belief about a specific fact about that topic. You can actually go and talk about something related to that topic that opens the door and provides a wedge to them changing their mind about that topic ultimately. So, another example is like if someone has a factually incorrect claim that human-caused climate change is not real. Rather than saying actually it is 95% of scientists agree that it is, you could say something along the lines of, but it does seem like a lot more severe weather events have been occurring all around the globe. And that makes me really nervous. And I'm, worried about my family's safety and the safety of my property. And so you start to open up that opportunity for them to adjust their beliefs on a subject by misdirecting them to talk about something related to it. And that's the bypass method.
And that's tips for good. Let's talk about some of the areas that are being cut. And when there's two specific areas that are being cut that are just, like I said, comically evil. And we need to talk about them. And I have an absolutely amazing fact to to kind of be the icing on the cake of that. So first off, this calls for a $800 billion cut to Medicaid and the ACA. One of the major campaign promises that Trump made was that he would not touch Medicaid. And what is this doing? It's touching Medicaid. So it is imposing, it is expanding work requirements to account for not just people that are under the age. Like currently, it's the work requirements are in place for people that are under the age of 55. This expands that to 64.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that more than 90% of Medicaid beneficiaries are already working, or have a documented reason why they can't work, and like a good justified reason why they can't work.
Yeah. Now it is important to say that it does specify able-bodied.
Yes. Yes. It
so
does
it's not necessarily directly going after people that are on Medicaid because of a disability. Now,
yes.
There are still some provisions that will affect that. It is important to note that they are putting up more red tape and paperwork to verify Medicaid eligibility.
Yep.
So usually so right now they verify it once a year. They're now going to be verifying it twice a year.
Yeah.
And here's the issue with putting up more red tape and paperwork for people getting their benefits. The types of people that are going to need programs such as Medicaid are going to be the types of people that are going to have trouble navigating complex government systems. And look, I'm not saying that to sound elitist. I have a master's degree, and when I tried to apply for Medicaid years ago, it was fucking incomprehensible.
Totally.
Like,
yeah, it's already an incredibly complex thing to do.
It's already an
just to get
incredibly
coverage in the
complex
first
thing.
place. Yeah.
So I'm not even necessarily saying people are too dumb to understand it. What I'm saying is smart people are too dumb to understand it because it's fucking incomprehensible.
Totally. Yeah, and I think that's a great call because when you say we just want to have people document, we just want to have people work, or just we want to make sure people are documenting that they don't need to work and stuff like that. So it's a couple of things. First off, increasing burdens on something like this will result in people losing coverage.
Yeah.
And we know this because states have attempted similar things and saw similar outcomes. So Arkansas implemented Medicaid work and reporting requirements with consequences for noncompliance. And their requirements were in effect from June 2018 through March 2019. And during that period, 18,000 people, or approximately 25% of the population subject to the requirement, lost coverage. And that was primarily due to failure to meet the reporting work status requirement for or for failing to report their eligibility for an exemption. And researchers found that the reporting requirements were associated with loss of Medicaid coverage, an increase in the percentage of adults who were uninsured, and no significant increase or change in employment, because nearly everyone targeted by the policy already met the requirements or qualified for an exemption. So it is a professor of government and policy at Cornell said, quote, "Work requirements are simply Medicaid cuts by another name. They serve little other purpose. There is little to no evidence that work requirements actually boost labor market participation."
I mean, and we've seen this in various programs. All right, the more you means test, the harder it gets for the people that actually need it to actually get it.
Totally.
Even if the means testing is specifically to target the specific people that need to get it, it does end up affecting those people anyway.
Totally. And fucking healthcare is kind of like air. It isn't good enough to have it just some of the time.
Yeah. It's also like food.
Yeah.
Which they're also
cutting.
Yeah. So they're doing a similar thing for SNAP benefits, which is going to represent a $300 billion cut to food stamps. And again, it's one of those things where people will die.
Jesus fucking Christ.
And before we get into that specifically, here is the amazing fact that So this is another thing that the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities put together. They put together the amount of tax cuts over the last 10 years that would go to people earning over 500K.
Mm-hmm.
They put that number at $1.1 trillion, which is the same amount as what is being cut from SNAP and Medicaid and the ACA. So basically, they are directly cutting. They're taking food and healthcare away from poor people
and babies
to give that fucking money to the wealthiest Americans.
It's comic.
To almost to the dollar amount.
If it weren't so horrible, this would be like absurd.
Yeah. Like that is it is reverse Robin Hood. It is reverse Robin Hood. Like it is comically evil. So anyway, Michael already talked about the problems with putting work requirements. Those the same levels of work requirements are being put on SNAP.
Yeah, and they estimate that 3 million households will lose or have benefits of food assistance reduced, including 1.5 million families who would lose benefits entirely, 1.2 million families who would have lower benefits, and this includes 1.8 million people, including 48,000 children. Right? Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, and also we forgot to give you the full number for the Medicaid cuts real quick.
Oh yeah.
The CBO, the nonpartisan CBO, projects that 8.6 million people can expect to have their health coverage rescinded as a result of this bill.
Yeah.
We just did a segment recently about how we need to have fucking universal health care.
Mm-hmm.
They're just moving away from that. They're doing they're going in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
They're doing everything they can to make sure that if you're poor, the solution is don't get sick, and if you get sick, die quickly.
Yep, totally. And the thing is also on SNAP, they already have work requirements, right?
Yeah.
Individuals are required to work at least 80 hours per month to qualify for SNAP, which includes individuals 8 to 54 who are able to work and have no dependents. And they want to expand it to include households with children, unless the children are under 7. So basically, like your work requirements extend to you having children that you have to care for, even if you don't have childcare or anything like it's unworkable, it's impractical, as well as expanding it to individuals 55 to 64, so increasing that age requirement, and limiting states' flexibility to request waivers for work requirements in areas with super high unemployment rates. So just absolutely making a bad situation way worse and literally just giving the money away to the richest people.
Yeah. On top of that, it rescinds Biden-era tax credits for electric vehicles, for green energy. It approves additional fossil fuel drilling on public land, which, again, you can never underestimate the ability for Republicans to go in exactly the opposite direction of what we need to. All right. Climate change is a fucking climate disaster right now. It's not even climate change. It's just climate disaster.
Yeah.
We're at basically a tipping point with climate change. And not only do they want to drill, baby, drill, they want to make it so that the necessary economic investments that we need in order to actually be able to properly transition from a fossil fuel economy to a clean energy economy, which we need to start investing in that now if we want that transition to actually be economically sound. They want to limit that.
Yep. They
want to prevent that because the fossil fuel industry is a major contributor to Republican campaigns. This is just them getting a return on investment through the legalized bribery system that we have in the form of super PACs. That's literally what that is.
Yeah, totally. So not only does it increase leasing of public lands for drilling, mining, and logging, and decrease the approvals process and speeds up the government's process for approving these. In a last-minute addition to the bill, Republicans actually included a provision that authorized the sale of hundreds of thousands of acres of public land in Nevada and Utah. The sale of public land.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just selling us out.
Yeah. On top of that, the legislation would fund $46.5 million to revive the construction of the fucking border wall.
Yeah, it's money well spent. They can do that with the logging timbers that they get from the new leases.
Which we've talked about the border wall before. We've talked about the fact that historically, study after study after study has shown that an increase in border security actually increases the number of undocumented immigrants in the country because it doesn't disincentivize people from trying to cross the border, because the reason why people try to cross the border is not because one day they thought, you know what, I'm kind of tired of where I live, I think I'm just going to go live in America. No, the reason why people do that is because of instability in their own countries, or or some type of negative life event that compels them to do that. It does not disincentivize people from wanting to come, because the reason why people want to come is because of other external factors. But what it does do is disincentivize circular migration, which means that if you make it harder for them to come, when they get here, they're not going to want to ever try to go back, because they're like, well, I got here. I'm here now, so I'm just going to stay here. And on top of that, they're actually imposing a $1,000 fee on migrants that are trying to seek asylum, which, again, to be clear, when you put in red tape that makes it difficult for people to go through the legal process of immigration, you know what happens? An increase in the number of people that are undocumented.
Yeah. And to be clear, seeking asylum is a legal process.
It's a legal process. There are only 2 other countries in the world that have a fee for seeking asylum.
And I bet they're really good, really, really like cool countries that we want to be like, right?
Well, one of them is Australia, which, okay.
Yeah, but not a lot of people going over that border.
Yeah, true. The other is Iran.
Ooh.
So, yeah, we are joining the ranks of Australia, which, okay, fine, and Iran.
Yeah,
all right?
Not ideal.
So, to be clear, when you make it more difficult for people to do the legal process, they will do the illegal process. When you increase the barriers to getting into the country, that disincentivizes people from wanting to go back. All right? So, this is literally, we have found time after time that an increase of border security to this extent does not actually disincentivize that type of migration. In order to disincentivize undocumented immigration, what actually helps to prevent that is to have more caseworkers, to have more judges, so that people can actually process those claims. And what's nice about that is if you make the legal process significantly more clean and significantly more simple, it gives you a better ability to vet the types of people that are actually coming into the country, to potentially prevent people that might have a criminal record, that might have a dicey past, that might have reasons that could potentially cause them to be shady figures. And it also means that the types of people that are actually going to be going through the illegal process are not going to be the types of people that are just looking for another life. Those are going to be the types of people that might actually have nefarious means, which means that you can focus on the people that actually might be wanting to do us harm.
Yeah.
So
totally.
it's a stupid, we've talked about this before, but it's a stupid policy. It's a policy that does not work. It's a policy that only creates additional barriers, unnecessary barriers, and increases the number of undocumented people in the country. It also calls for funding of an additional 10,000 more ICE employees, which at this point, ICE has just basically just become Trump's Gestapo.
Like personal police. Yeah.
Like it's, and that might sound extreme, but they're taking people in the middle of the night. They're showing up in masks. They're taking people in the middle of the night, arresting them without due process, and sending them to a torture prison in El Salvador. I do not think that the comparison to Gestapo, I don't think that that's an unfair comparison when that is literally what they're fucking doing.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we should definitely do a deep dive on ICE, but they literally have arrested or deported like U.S. citizens. In the case of the other
Yeah.
day, they arrested like the Newark mayor and brought him to an ICE detention facility.
Yeah. Which
Like that's Gestapo shit.
Immigration has no authority on that. If he broke the law, then you send local law enforcement.
Exactly.
But he didn't break the law. That's the thing. That's the like.
Yeah, exactly.
It's and remember that 4.5 seconds when Elon Musk made it seem like he was going to try to cut the military budget. You know, remember that when he was saying, yeah, oh, there's a lot of wasteful spending at the Pentagon, and we're going to be looking at defense spending. And remember when people like Bernie Sanders were like, yes, you're right. There is a lot of defense spending. I agree with Elon Musk on this. And everybody, and you look, he was only saying that, like Bernie was calling his bluff. Like he knew that Musk was full of shit, but like literally everybody was saying, and I'm pretty sure I said on the pod, I can 100% guarantee you that there's not going to be a cut in the military budget, that there is certainly going to be an increase.
Mm-hmm.
I can guarantee you that. Well, guess what? This calls for another $150 billion for new money for the Defense Department and national security. The one caveat that I will put on the military spending increase, and again, this is in the spirit of trying to be fair, it does include a $9 billion investment for service member quality of life related issues, including housing, healthcare, and special pay. And you know what? Good. Yeah. Like, I'm totally fine with that, you know, but the overall increase to the military budget, fuck that shit.
Yeah, for sure. And one last thing I want to mention, on top of conservatives like getting rid of like Biden's student loan proposals, they're literally taking actions that will undermine our ability for students to go to fucking college. And if they do go to college, they will keep them in debt for longer. So they're going to be eliminating the federal subsidy for student loans, which means that the government won't cover interest rate on debt while borrowers are in school or during key periods afterwards, which could increase a student's loan balance at graduation by about 15%. And the Department of Education's is also going to be changing its income-based repayment plans. So typically, that they cause the debt to be forgiven after 20 or 25 years. The new GOP plan would cause debt cancellation after up to 30 years, as well as getting rid of deferment of payments for unemployment or economic hardship. So basically, it's going to be locking people in to these loans for up to 30 years with no ability to defer payment. So the government will just be, you know, undermining our ability for students to fucking get an education.
Well, and it makes sense because, you know, they have long decried universities as being the enemy of the enemy of Republican ideas.
Yeah.
And look, the reason for that is because universities teach people to think critically. And when people think critically, they realize, oh, you guys are fucking us over.
Yes, they do. So what's next? The bill has to go to the Senate. The Senate is probably going to attempt some adjustments to the bill, as they always do. It does go through the reconciliation process, which means they just need a bare majority, and they have enough senators to lose up to 3 GOP senators and still get the bill passed.
Actually, up to 4.
Up to 4. Sorry, I should
because
say.
JD Vance would be the
tiebreaker. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So this thing in some form is likely going to pass, especially because Congress has to raise the debt limit by mid-July to avoid like economic default, which means that like there's a lot of, you know, economic and political pressure to get something like this passed. So, you know, we still have a month and a half or so until we hit the debt limit, but yeah, we're looking at this thing very likely passing in substantially this form.
So one thing to understand, though, is that when it does go to the Senate will probably make adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
And if it does make adjustments, that does mean that it's going to have to go back to the House.
Yes.
Which means there's going to have to be another vote on it. Now, the reason why that is important for you to know is because it only passed the House by one vote.
One fucking vote, y'all.
One fucking vote, which means that if we start raising a stink about this, if we start screaming from the rooftops about this, if you live in a district with a Republican member of the House of Representatives, or if you live in a state with a Republican senator, especially one that might potentially be in danger of losing their seat because they live in a purple district, because you live in a purple district, now is the time to start flooding their fucking phone lines.
Yes.
All right. Now is the time to start putting pressure on them, because if they do go through the reconciliation process and there are changes and it has to be sent back to the House, all we need to do, like assuming that the two Republicans that vote against it continue to vote against it, all we need to do is flip one more Republican in the House, and we can kill it.
Yeah.
So it's not over yet. This is an absolute travesty of a bill. This is the biggest cut to Medicaid in history. All right. This is a reverse Robin Hood bill.
Yeah.
That I mean, this should be like, I mean, there's been a 1,000 final nails on the coffin for the Trump administration that should have showed you, oh, this guy is actually just an elitist who is only here to help the rich and to help himself. There should have been 1,000 final nails on the coffin in the first administration. This right here, like the cost of the cuts to SNAP and Medicaid, which again, he promised he would not cut Medicaid.
Yeah.
The cost of the cuts to SNAP and Medicaid are approximately the same amount of money that will be saved by earners who make over $500,000 a year.
Yeah. They
are stealing from the poor to give to the rich.
Yep.
And you need to raise a stink about it.
Yeah. So go to www.congress.gov/members/find-your-member to find your member of Congress and get their contact information, and you fucking call that shit.
Yeah.
And now it's time for one of our favorite segments, Ass Hat of the Week. So, Nathan, who is our ass hat this week?
Michael, I could not be more happy to introduce this week's ass hat. It is our favorite puppy murderer, Kristi Noem.
Oh my gosh. Kristi Noem.
Kristi Noe, come on down.
Kristi Noe. I actually have a Kristi Noem in my garden. Oh, wait,
really?
That's just a normal gnome. Never mind. So what did Kristi Noem
Might be a crusty gnome
to get on our show this week?
Well, so honestly, I debated a little bit about what to classify this as. And then I remembered, oh yeah, at the end of the day, she is arguing for basically a fascist takeover. So you know what? We're just going to say asshat. So
nice.
Kristi Noem was testifying before the Senate. Now, remember, Kristi Noem is the Homeland Security Director. So, very important position. Homeland Security Director. She, ideally, this is supposed to be an expert in all things related to policy, related to law,
and administering Homeland Security,
and administering Homeland Security.
Yeah.
So you would think that someone who is in charge of the Department of Homeland Security would understand some things about the laws of that homeland that they are trying to secure. She was in a question. She was testifying before the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, and she was asked by Senator Maggie Hassan, who is a senator from New Hampshire, what habeas corpus was. Now, a lot of you have probably been seeing stuff in the news about the Trump administration trying to say, "Oh, we're trying to get rid of habeas corpus, trying to suspend habeas corpus." Now, Kristi Noem responded by saying, quote, "Habeas corpus is a constitutional right the president has to remove people from this country."
So here's why that's bullshit.
So, honestly, it is literally almost the polar opposite.
Yeah.
Like, habeas corpus is basically you have to have a trial. Like, it literally means produce the body. Like, show me the body.
Yeah.
It's like It literally just means due process. It means that you can't just arrest people without due process.
Yeah, and you have the right to challenge your detention by the government.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
exactly.
is a key right that prevents you from just being interminably detained or imprisoned without being given access to due process.
Yeah. So then Hassan has to explain to the Secretary of Homeland Security what this basic ass constitutional concept means, and then asks if, do you support that? And she responded, quote, "Yes, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not."
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. So it was actually asked a little bit later in the hearing, like, okay, which part of the Constitution is that in? And she couldn't. She was like, I don't know. Can you name the article? Can you even name the article? No, I can't name the article. Now, here's the thing. That's fucking stupid that you can't even name the article. Because, look, if theoretically this were a power of the president, then that would be in Article 2. Because Article 2 is the article of the Constitution that lays out the executive branch. But here's the thing. The suspension of habeas corpus is in the Constitution in Article 1. Article 1, Section 9, which states that habeas corpus can't be suspended, quote, unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. But importantly, it is in Article 1, which means that the authority is not with the president, it is with Congress. The president does not have the authority to suspend habeas corpus.
I think there's one fatal flaw in your argument, Nathan. You got to be able to read to be able to read that.
That is a good point. That is a good point.
So congratulations to Chrissy Nomi for being this week's
Ass Hat of the Week.
And now we'll end our show as we usually do with our highlights. So Nathan, what's your highlight this week?
My highlight this week is that today I had a lovely walk in the park with my kid. I do that a lot, but I don't know. It just felt especially nice today. I've been putting her on the swing, and she's learned to she's learned how to tell me when she wants to go on the swing.
Ooh.
Yeah. She walks up to the swing, she points at it, and then she looks at me, and then she puts her arms up like, pick me up. And we've been playing this game that I like to call Battering Ram, where I push her on the swing, and then I get into the path of the swing as if I'm about to be hit, and then I move at the last second, and she just giggles so much at it. She loves it, and I gotta tell you, there is nothing better than the feeling of making your baby laugh.
That is so sweet, man. I love it.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. What about you, Mike? What's your highlight?
Mine's perspective. I'm going to be traveling this coming week for a trip to the Southwest United States, and Taylor's going to join, and we're going to have a camper van camping thing around, Las Vegas and San Diego. So it's going to be awesome.
As always, your life never fails to be more adventurous than mine.
Well, hey, no little children laughed at me. So
that is true. That is true.
So now we'll thank the amazing people that make this show possible. So thank you to our wonderful patrons, Jerry DeViller, Taylor Bloom, Fidel Scoop, Kyle Chaska, and Tobias Janssen. And thank you to our amazing editor, Kayla, for all they do to make this show possible. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to The Perspectrum, and you'll hear from us again next week.